Hey there, viewers. Someone who worked behind the scenes at a Beyoncé shoot just came forward with a story that's got people rattled. Not about drama or diva behavior, but about something way stranger. A silent ritual, a missing mirror, and what looked like a prayer to something no one else could see. Here's what they claim went down. Chapter 1. Unit 12B doesn't exist. It was almost closing time when I got there. Rain was already coming down sideways, and I had to park on the gravel shoulder because the lot was flooded up to the knees of the rental trucks. The sign above the gate buzzed like it had a short in it. Self-storage solutions, with the L in self completely burned out. I didn't even notice that until I was buzzed in and waiting under the rusted little overhang. I remember it now. Everything about that place came back into focus once I saw the door. I wasn't planning on talking to anyone. I'd paid in cash the week before, 3 months up front for the smallest indoor unit they had, no questions. The lady who rented it to me didn't even look up when she handed me the key, just slid a clipboard across the counter and said, "Sign here if you don't want insurance. It's your loss if anything happens." Now the guy at the gate, he wasn't the same. Younger, maybe mid-20s, with one of those patchy beards and a long sleeve even though it was still August. He kept squinting at the computer behind the counter like he was trying to make the screen work through willpower. "What number did you say?" 12B, I told him. He frowned. "We don't have a 12B. I said, "Yeah, you do. It's right here." I handed him the little brass key from my keychain, the one with 12B stamped into the flat edge. He took it, turned it in his hand like he was checking if it was real. Then he walked over to the wall where they had that huge laminated grid map of the facility. He traced a finger down a column, then tapped a space between 12A and 13. "Weird," he said. "That's just listed as extra footage for 12A. Officially, the 12A action film is to start production, so it's not in the system as its own unit, but it must be built out if there's a key." He looked back at me and half shrugged. "You're paid up through October, though. I'll write it down." He reached under the desk and tore a piece of paper off a stack of handwritten visitor logs. He wrote 12B active as of August and initialed it with a pen that barely worked. Then he handed me both the key and the paper tag, like that made it real. By the time I got inside, the rain had turned into that heavy kind that feels more like being hit with a warm sponge. The hallway smelled like rust and roach traps, and the fluorescent lights made a faint popping sound every few seconds, like they were catching their breath. When I turned the corner past Unit 12A, there it was, 12B, just like I remembered. The door looked like all the others. Tan roller shutter, padlock loop, the number painted slightly off-center. But the air in front of it felt wrong. I don't know how else to explain that. The hallway was cold, but my palms started sweating. My shirt stuck to the inside of my elbows. I unlocked it and lifted the door just enough to slide under. The metal scraped like it hadn't moved in years, but the inside was clean. Not dusty, not musty, just blank, like nothing had ever been there before. The case was right where I left it. Black flight case, wheels scuffed to hell, handle wrapped in old gaffer tape that still smelled like burnt rubber. I rolled it toward the back wall where a single plastic chair sat facing nothing. I don't remember putting that chair there, but I also don't remember a lot from that week. Everything from that week feels like a smear. But I know what I packed, and I know what was inside. The case was labeled on all sides, but the labels didn't match. One said "Charity Real" in big block letters. Another, pasted over the top, said "Eurodome, do not screen." The fonts were different, like they'd been printed by 2 different companies. One of the corner stickers had peeled halfway off, and underneath it was something I hadn't noticed before. A printed pattern. Not a logo, Not a barcode, just a series of tight hex shapes that didn't repeat no matter how long I stared. It looked almost woven, like the design of it was meant to distract your eyes from finding the center. I tried not to think about that. I crouched down and flipped the latches. The case opened with a hiss of trapped air, and the inside looked exactly as I left it. Foam cutouts, cables coiled neatly, 2 dead lav mics in a sandwich bag. I reached under the panel where I'd taped the old silica gel packs. My fingers hit plastic. Thin. Warm. That made me pause. Silica doesn't stay warm, not in a unit that hasn't been opened in weeks, but those little gel sacks were warm like they'd been sitting under a laptop fan. I peeled one off the back and saw condensation. Not from cold, from heat. And nestled right there, between 2 strips of foam, was the card. The micro SD, black and gold, taped under the insert with a single strip of black electrical tape. I peeled it back slow, like maybe someone else had put it there since the last time I looked. I shouldn't have been surprised by the label written across it, but I was, because I didn't write that. Not in those words. Roomtone _11:40 p.m.wav. The exact time, the exact file format, written in my handwriting. I held it up to the overhead light and tilted it. The ink didn't shine, didn't flake. It looked printed, like the pen wasn't even a pen. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I jumped hard enough to drop the card back into the case. I fished out the burner, a tiny flip phone I'd only bought for this one job. The screen lit up bright blue and flashed a name I hadn't seen in weeks. The handler. No number. Just that name. Then it vanished. The screen went back to no service and the phone powered off completely. I didn't turn it back on. I pocketed the card and closed the case again, but not all the way. Something in me couldn't make myself latch it. I sat down in the plastic chair and stared at the floor for a while. The cement had these faint lines on it, not cracks. More like grooves from something heavy being rolled in and out, again and again. I don't remember how long I sat there before I pulled out my recorder. It was just a little handheld unit, nothing fancy, but it had a micro SD slot. I slipped the card in, snapped the cover shut, and waited for the file list to load. One item. Room. Tone _11:40 p.m.wav. I pressed play. Nothing happened at first, just silence, not even ambient hiss, like the kind of silence you get in a soundproof chamber. The file's waveform was almost flat. Almost. Every few seconds, these tiny notches appeared, little micro teeth spaced perfectly, like clockwork. And at the 11-minute 40-second mark on the timeline, one of the notches flared just slightly higher than the others. That was it. I turned off the recorder. If you're listening to me now, then you've already heard it. Somewhere, sometime, in a clip or a song or a documentary you didn't think twice about. You heard it, and you didn't notice. That's how it spreads. Quiet, polite, no fangs. That's why I kept this one copy. Just one. The others are gone. Burned, wiped, corrupted, whatever you want to call it. This one survived. Not because it was safer, because it wasn't meant to. I left the unit exactly as I found it. Case open, chair empty, card gone. I didn't tell the guy at the desk anything on the way out. He didn't even look up. Just nodded like I'd checked out of a motel and he didn't want to deal with housekeeping. When I got back to my apartment, I put the recorder in a shoebox lined with towels. It's still there. I don't plan on opening it again. But if I do, I won't be alone. Chapter 2. A good cause? A bad frequency. I wasn't supposed to be on that job. That's the first thing you have to understand. I wasn't the kind of person who usually got called in for big gigs or famous faces. Most of what I did was local, church events, community centers, boring press kits. I had a small camera and quiet shoes, and people liked that about me. I didn't ask a lot of questions. I got the footage, handed it over, and left. So when I got the call that Wednesday, it didn't even seem that strange, just another rushed favor for a crew that overbooked. I was in the checkout line at Target, trying to get a new card reader because my old one had melted a little in the car. The woman on the phone said she was from the foundation's partner office and that they needed someone to shoot behind-the-scenes B-roll for a charity press event happening the next morning. Said she'd gotten my name from a friend of a friend. I asked what kind of charity. She said pediatric relief and maternal care, clean water clinics, that sort of thing. Then she paused, like she was checking a script. And the campaign is fronted by a high-profile entertainer, so we ask that you dress in black and stay off camera at all times. Didn't ask who it was. Honestly, I assumed it was someone local, famous, an athlete or a soap actress. They offered to send a car to pick me up downtown at 7 a.m., which was unusual but not unheard of. The only thing that felt a little off was the NDA. They emailed it to me right away. Standard confidentiality stuff at first. No photos, no posts, no client names. But when I scrolled to the end, there was an addendum I'd never seen before. It was short, just 2 lines. The contractor shall not publish or repurpose any ambient audio captured at or near campaign events. Ambient audio includes room tone, crowd tone, unmarked recordings, or nonverbal sound captured by device microphones. It didn't make sense. Most people don't even know what room tone is, let alone care. But I'd already clicked yes. The fee was double my day rate. I figured maybe the client had been burned before, some leaked audio or someone lip-reading something in a live stream. The car was already waiting when I got to the corner the next morning. Black SUV, no markings. The driver didn't speak to me but handed me a printed schedule as soon as I got in. 1 sheet. The event name was at the top in bold. G. Mothers. Initiative. Los Angeles Campaign Kickoff. The rest was times and locations. The venue was a hotel I'd passed 1,000 times but never gone inside, something glassy and beige near the convention center. I was assigned to Ballroom C, prepped from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. for media, then cleared by 4. On the side of the sheet, someone had written in blue pen, "Stick to quiet zones, no lens flares. Headliner prefers natural movement over setup shots." That was the first time I saw that word, headliner. They never used her name. The ballroom had been completely flipped. What used to be carpet and chandeliers was now all vinyl backdrops, branded panels, LED tallies ticking upward in real time, showing donation totals climbing by the second. They were filming testimonials near the back wall. Nurses and social workers holding laminated photos of clinics and patient families. Everyone had that same kind of upbeat exhaustion, the kind that comes from telling the same story a dozen times in a row. I remember thinking how much nicer they were than the people I usually filmed. I was setting up near the side stage when the handler came up behind me. I didn't know that's what he was at the time, but it fits now. Late 40s, maybe. Clean blazer, soft-spoken. He smiled like he knew I was nervous. "You must be our new camera. Welcome," he said. "We like quiet shooters. You see everything and stay out of the way." He had a clipboard tucked under one arm and a bottle of something green in his other hand. He didn't ask my name, just gestured toward the main area. "She'll be making the rounds soon. Just catch the honest stuff. Nothing posed unless she asks." I nodded. I still didn't know who she was. Not until I saw her walk in. I don't need to tell you what she looks like. Everyone already knows. But I'll say this. She didn't walk in like a celebrity. No sunglasses, no dramatic entourage. Just her, a clean white dress, and 2 assistants with tablets. She looked exactly like the posters on the wall, only smaller, quieter, and somehow more real. She stopped and talked to every volunteer at every table, asked where they were from, held babies, thanked a woman who traveled from Nigeria to share her clinic's data. Nothing about her seemed fake. If anything, I felt awkward being there with the camera. She didn't perform for it. After a while, someone called for a 10-minute reset. Most of the crew left to grab coffee or reset gear. That's when the handler leaned over to the sound guy and said quietly, "Let's get tone." The sound guy, older, heavyset, wore his headphones like they were attached to his skull, nodded, and started adjusting dials. The lights were still on. The room didn't go dark or anything, but there was this moment, just a few seconds, where everything went still. "Till mains," the handler said. A technician pulled a switch and the background music stopped. The LED telly froze. Someone walked around the room and unplugged the big fans. Even the camera telly lights were dimmed. She stepped into the center of the room and looked around. She was standing right beneath the hotel's old ceiling projector mount, in the spot where the carpet had been pulled up to hide cords. She didn't say anything. Then she closed her eyes. The handler turned to the rest of us, me, the sound guy, and the security chief, a tall man with one of those necks that doesn't move when he turns his head. "Clear the mirrors." That's what he said, like it was normal. The assistants moved quickly. They pulled black cloths over every reflective surface, mirrors, screens, camera glass, even the empty teleprompter shells that had been pushed to the side of the room. It all happened so fast, like they'd practiced it. She stood perfectly still the whole time. The sound guy leaned toward me. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Hold gain low," he said. "If your meters start reading 0, that's when you're actually picking it up." I didn't understand what he meant, but I nodded anyway. I looked down at my handheld recorder. I wasn't even rolling yet, but the monitor was on. The levels were bouncing like normal, then they dropped. Slowly at first, then fast. Then nothing. 0. Not silence. 0. I looked up. No one was speaking. Not a single cough, no creak of shoes on the ballroom floor. Just her, standing in the center, eyes closed, breathing slow. The sound guy's face had gone tight. He stared at his screen like he was reading a threat. The security chief didn't blink. The clock on my recorder blinked. 11 hours, 40 minutes, 0 seconds. I didn't know what that meant yet. I looked at the handler. He was watching her, not us. And then it passed. She opened her eyes. The air shifted, like someone had opened a door in a different part of the hotel. Nothing dramatic, just lighter. Like the tension broke. She nodded once. The sound guy gave a small thumbs up. The handler whispered something into a headset. A minute later, the lights came back on. The room buzzed back to life like nothing had happened. The tally resumed ticking. People came back in with drinks and camera batteries. She smiled at a nurse holding a press folder and asked how her flight had been. I went to stop my recorder, but before I could, the systems tech appeared. Young guy, thick glasses, holding a tablet. "I'll take that," he said, reaching for my SD card. I hesitated. "Don't worry," he said quickly, already swapping in a new one. "Yours is backup. We consolidate after the second session." He labeled my card with a small sticker and pocketed it without waiting for me to respond. I watched him walk away. Later I checked a new card. The file he labeled wasn't the same. The timestamp was off, and when I looked at the waveform it was clean. Flat. Clean. Like it had been recorded in a vacuum. I couldn't prove it, but I knew the file wasn't mine. A week later, I saw a clip from the charity event circulating online. Just a quick edit posted by one of the sponsor pages. A few seconds of the headliner hugging a child, then a montage of smiling volunteers. It was sweet. Background music, nothing unusual. But in the comments, someone asked a weird question. Why does she always make them record room tone, like for actual minutes? Someone else replied, "It's a sync thing, duh." Then another, "Or maybe it's a ritual. Ever notice they always cover the mirrors?" And another, posted by someone whose profile photo was just a black square. Bees are omens, watch the waveform. I didn't respond. I just watched the clip again and turned up the volume. At the 6-second mark, when the crowd cuts to black and the music pauses for just a heartbeat, I heard it. Or rather, I didn't. The tiniest click of space folding in. And then the Hume started again. Chapter 3. Empty dome, full choir. The dome wasn't built for silence. You could tell the moment you stepped inside. It was a place made for echoes. Made to carry every scream, every whistle, every bass drop from one steel beam to the next. Even with the roof half open and no one in the seats, it felt like something was waiting to be shouted. Like the air had already learned how to vibrate a certain way, and it didn't like being still. I arrived just after 5 p.m., camera bag slung over my shoulder, vest zipped up to hide the sweat across my ribs. The sun was setting behind the rigging towers, throwing long shadows across the stadium floor. Dozens of crew were already in motion, hauling truss, snapping LED panels into place, tightening winches with the same tired urgency you see at every show that's pretending it's not behind schedule. But he couldn't sleep. I wasn't the only camera that day, but I was the only one pointed inward. The rest were for marketing, BTS reels, fan hype. Mine was for archive. That's what they told me when I signed the paper in the SUV that morning. Archive footage, clean and wide, no post, no edits, no voice. The security chief was already walking the floor when I got down to the staging level. He moved slow but sharp, like a teacher in a classroom that hadn't noticed he walked in. I saw him pause by a lighting tech's road case, shiny chrome-edged, and tap the corner with a boot. "No reflective cases on deck," he said. "No anger, just fact. Tape it or move it." I shook my head. The tech didn't argue. He pulled a roll of matte black gaffer from his pocket and got to work. I looked around and saw others doing the same. Corners wrapped, logos blurred, polished panels dulled under layers of black tape. There were no mirrors anywhere, but the rules still applied. Nothing that could bounce light or reflect movement. I wasn't sure if it was superstition or something practical. Something about lasers or safety or live stream artifacts. But either way, it was non-negotiable, no reflections. An hour later, most of the floor was cleared. The catwalks above were lit in strips, pulsing softly like arteries. The LED walls flickered between test patterns, grayscale spirals, static grids, then the show logo, a stylized Ouroboros in silver gold loops. But even that logo never quite closed. The tail always hovered just shy of the mouth, like the circle didn't want to be complete. The band had been scheduled for 6, but they weren't there yet, just the sub-team, tuning frequencies you couldn't hear but could definitely feel. I had just finished calibrating my wide-angle lens when she walked out. No spotlight, no cue, just her. The headliner. She was dressed in something soft, draping, unbranded, her hair tied back, no makeup crew behind her. She carried nothing but a small in-ear case in one hand, and even that she handed off before stepping to the center of the dome floor. Her subtech looked over from the mixing bay. She made a quick motion, 2 fingers down, slow and firm. He understood immediately. The baseline that had been trembling through the floor faded into nothing. Not a cut, not a fade or dip, just less. Like the room itself sank an inch deeper into stillness. And then my chest tightened. It wasn't fear, it was pressure. Not like altitude or weather. This was something else. Like being caught in the pause between 2 deep breaths, when your body knows it shouldn't move. The kind of stillness you feel in hospitals, right before a machine starts beeping again. She stood there for a moment, eyes open, staring up at a rigging point that hadn't been lit. just a dark gap in the grid. She didn't blink. Her arms slowly dropped to her sides. Then she knelt. Calm, deliberate, both knees, hands open, resting on her thighs, her head tilted slightly up, still looking at the dark spot above. There were no theatrics, no fans, no wind machines, no spiritual choreography. It wasn't a performance, it was just a body kneeling. And yet the camera read it as prayer. I turned on my recorder. The moment I did, the silence inside the dome changed. It stopped being empty. It became elastic, like the space around her was drawing in every echo that would have otherwise drifted away. The distant hum of the city outside, the sirens, the traffic, even the birds, faded until I couldn't remember if I'd ever heard them at all. The meters on my device began to smooth, not spike, not dip. Smooth, as if the sound being captured wasn't a signal but a vacuum. The headliner didn't move. Then, at some unseen cue, she opened her mouth, not to speak, not to sing, but just to breathe deeper. And that's when she spoke. Hold it at 2 minutes. That's all she said. To no one in particular. The subtech, still at his station, nodded without looking at anyone. The meters on his screen changed again, and still she stared at the unlit beam, like there was something there she was responding to. Or waiting for. Off near the north tunnel, I saw a man walking across the floor. He wore a gray suit, perfectly pressed. No pass badge, no headset. Just a thin tablet under one arm, and a small earpiece that glinted when he turned toward the lights. He wasn't watching her. He was watching the crowd mic grid. Rows and rows of microphones tucked into the bleachers, wired through the seats like they were part of the architecture. Every 20 chairs, another one, covered in matte fabric, invisible unless you were looking for them. The man stopped at one cluster and made a note on his tablet. "Coverage is everything," I heard him say. He wasn't talking to me. In another corner of the stadium, the dancers were walking through formations. No music, just count-offs and soft footfalls. Their lines didn't form letters, or symbols, or anything familiar. They turned, merged, expanded, then coiled into a kind of spiral that curved inward but never reached a center. They paused there, waiting for a cue that didn't come, and then reversed the whole motion in silence. The spiral unspooled, the circle never closed. I filmed it all, no commentary, just long locked shots. Later, I'd scroll through fan footage from previous shows, shaky clips from the nosebleeds. You'd see them all standing, 20,000 strong, holding their breath together while the lights dimmed and the stage went quiet. Someone had posted a video titled, "Why She Makes Us Go Silent," with a thumbnail of the crowd frozen like statues. The comments were split. "She's healing us spiritually," one read. "Real witch acid," another said. "Nobody move, nobody breathe, it's giving summoning." Another post from backstage. A TikTok from a bored PA. "All mirrors taped over again. Can someone explain why that's in the rider? It's not vibes, it's specific." One fan argued back, "It's RF discipline. All those frequencies bouncing off glass mess with the subarray. It's not demons, it's math." I don't know if any of them were right, but what I do know is what happened next. The headliner stood up. No ceremony, no cue. She just rose, slowly, like the weight that had held her in place had let go. She turned her head slightly and gave a look to the subtech. 2 minutes. He pressed a key. A tone played. I inaudible, but real. I felt it behind my eyes. A low shimmer across the bones of the dome. She left the floor. Nothing marked her exit. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. She just stepped off the floor and disappeared into the shadow between the seating gates. I lowered my camera, and that's when I saw it. One of the seat tags, plastic, molded with the number 624 embossed in white, had flipped backwards. The way the air had moved, the way something had shifted when she stood. It had flipped the tag, clean and slow, like a breeze touched just that one. I walked over, crouched down and looked at it. There was nothing written on the back, nothing drawn, just a blank gray strip where the factory logo used to be. I reached out and turned it forward again. The plastic was warm, not sun-warmed, not from heat, but from pressure, from something having touched it. I looked up at the grid above. The rigging point where she had stared was still unlit, still empty. But now I knew better. There was nothing there. And that was the part that scared me. Chapter 4. Thread count. The wardrobe bunker was colder than I expected. Not the kind of cold you feel on your skin, but a dry, engineered cold meant for preservation, not comfort. The kind of chill that keeps sweat from staining silk and keeps seams from shifting while hands are still sewing. It was tucked 2 floors below the main rehearsal stage, through a freight elevator that didn't ping or ding when it opened. Just a silent slide and the whoosh of filtered air. It didn't look like a bunker, not at first. The walls were cream-colored and clean, and the floor had that soft gray commercial carpeting you only ever see in museums and upscale labs. But the racks were real. Heavy steel, not aluminum. Wheels locked with actual brakes, and on them, rows of garments wrapped in black muslin, each one labeled with a white tag written in block lettering, no brand names. So they'd done some homework first. No designer credits, just categories. Opening set. Press look, unscripted. The head of wardrobe was a woman named Daria. Sharp voice, hands like someone who had burned herself too many times on steamers, and never complained. She wore a tool belt with actual tailor's chalk and a loop of measuring tape that was stained halfway down its length with blue dye. She didn't look at me when I started filming, just nodded and said, "If you see me trip over something, don't zoom." That morning was supposed to be routine, cataloging materials for the production reel, documenting details in case anything needed to be replicated for the European leg of the tour. But an hour in, one of the steamers blew. Not dramatically. No sparks, just a sudden hiss and a wet popping sound like someone had cracked a knuckle underwater. One of the seamstresses, tall, curly hair and a head wrap, shouted for help and yanked a gown off the press hook before the moisture could spread. I was already filming, so I pivoted, panning over to catch the fabric as it swung wide, the skirt spilling across a metal prep table. Daria rushed over, cursing softly in Russian. She bent to inspect the lining, then froze. She waved the steam away with the back of her hand and called for a cloth. As another assistant blotted at the damp folds, Daria pressed her fingers into the underside of the hem, right where the fabric met the interfacing. That's when I noticed it. The inner weave wasn't satin or mesh. It wasn't even regular interfacing. It had a pattern, tight, dense, not printed but woven directly into the structure of the textile itself. It wasn't regular geometry. At first I thought it was honeycomb, a common theme, but the cells weren't uniform. Some were sharp, others curved. Some had 5 sides, some 7, and none of them repeated. The longer I stared, the more I lost track of where one ended and the next began. I zoomed in with my macro lens, snapped a few stills. The threading had no seams, no breaks. Like it had been formed in one go, topologically perfect and intentionally disorienting. When I showed Daria the close-up, she muttered something under her breath. "That's not ours," she said. "The outer fabric is custom, yes, but the interfacing," she tapped the edge of the hem, "that's beyond bespoke. That's precision." She stepped aside and dialed someone from the designer's team. They answered in less than 2 rings. Video call. Man appeared, face pale blue in LED light, a rack of mannequins blurred behind him. "Yes," he asked. Daria angled the camera toward the gown. Interface on G4C, not standard. Can you explain? The man leaned in, eyes narrowing. He adjusted his glasses, then nodded. Ah, that's our anti-Moore weave. Developed in-house. Prevents LED panel interference during full-frame zooms. The pattern's a modified Penrose structure. Not for aesthetics, just physics. I could tell Daria wasn't convinced, but she accepted the explanation. Fine, she said, but next time label it. We thought it was contaminated. She ended the call. I kept filming. Later, when I was back at my desk importing footage, I ran the macro shots through a waveform analyzer out of curiosity. The overlay didn't give me anything clear at first, but when I matched the waveform against a snippet of the room tone recording, the one labeled room tone _1140 PA, the pattern began to blink. Not a full match, not a direct one-to-one, but every 9 seconds the waveform from the audio would spike in a soft rise, just like the way the thread weave curved and broke alignment, as if the fabric was echoing something, or remembering it. Exercised, billowing. Wasn't proof, but it wasn't nothing. A few hours later, the headliner came in for fittings. She was alone, no entourage, no stylists, just her and Daria, moving through the rack of black muslin like they were sorting relics instead of clothing. At one point, she paused to sit on the little upholstered bench near the prep mirror. It wasn't really a mirror anymore, just a matte-surfaced monitor used for 3D garment capture, but it still caught reflections, soft and dark. She took out a notebook, not a phone, a real notebook, spiral-bound, half-folded with pages curling at the corners. I wasn't supposed to film, but I kept the camera low and running. She started sketching, slow at first, then faster. I couldn't see much until she turned slightly toward the light. That's when I caught the edge of the page. On it were 2 things: a rough sketch of a beehive, hexagonal, clean, and below it, 5 horizontal lines like a music staff. Instead of notes, there were symbols, dots, slashes, loops. She crossed out the hide, kept the staff. Next, she pulled something from her pocket. A ring, not fancy, silver, thick, but when she turned it in her fingers, I saw a micro groove along the outer edge, the kind of groove you'd find on a vinyl record, but smaller. She held it near the lapel mic clipped to her jacket. Then, slowly, she ran the ring's edge across the mesh. It made a sound. Not a tone, not a click, just a soft hiss, white noise, but thinner. I looked at Daria. She didn't flinch, neither did the headliner. She just listened to the ring and then slipped it on her thumb like it had passed some kind of test. After she left, I stayed behind to pack up. Daria stood next to me, brushing lint from the edge of a pressed blazer. "You want to know why we blocked the mirrors?" she asked, not looking up. "We purchased if I didn't answer. It's not superstition, infrared scatter, messes with motion tracking. It's not spiritual, it's science." She walked away before I could say anything. That night, I fell into a comment thread I should have left alone. A gossip forum, half rumors, half rants. Someone claiming to be an ex-dresser for the tour said they'd found symbols sewn into the seams. Not drawn, not printed, sewn. They posted a blurry photo of a hem with a dark line snaking across it. The replies split, like they always do. Witchcraft. Custom interfacing. Someone finally noticed. Can't y'all just let black women wear gold without screaming about devils? Another thread linked an old tabloid headline. Oshun or occult? Beyoncé's gold dress sparks ritual rumors. The article quoted a preacher, a fashion critic, and a fan account, all arguing about what the color yellow meant. No one mentioned sound, or thread, or time. I pulled out my stage plot from the last venue, the crowd mic array, the ambient nodes spaced every 20 seats. I compared them to the still frame of the interfacing weave from the gown. I traced each cluster, each repeat. Every node on the mic map lined up with a bend in the weave, not perfectly, but close enough to make my throat feel dry. I saved both files under a folder labeled Thread Interference. I didn't know what I was looking at, but it wasn't fashion. It was structure. Chapter 5. Clear the mirrors. It was already raining by the time we got there. Not the kind of heavy, sweeping storm you brace for. This was the slow kind, the kind that settled over the hills and dripped off eaves for hours, steady and unchanging, like the sky had given up on drama and just wanted to dampen everything. The wipers on the SUV clicked every 5 seconds, squeaking against the glass even though the driver had just changed them. He didn't say a word the entire ride up. The estate sat halfway up a private hillside outside the city, past 3 layers of coated gates and a stretch of road with no shoulder and no signs. The kind of road you don't find unless someone gives you directions, and even then, you'll miss it the first time. There were floodlights buried in the hedges, but none were on. The house itself wasn't old or spooky or looming. It was clean, almost soft-looking, smooth concrete, wide glass windows, warm lights that didn't spill too far. Modern, controlled. Inside, the floors were stone, cool underfoot, even through my shoes. The walls were padded in places, not with anything visible, but I could tell by the way my footsteps didn't echo. It was like walking inside a muted thought. The handler met me at the door. He had the same quiet voice, the same look, like he wasn't quite looking at you, but also never missed a thing. "She'll be down shortly," he said. "We'd like you to get some texture plates of the library." That's what he called it, texture plates, like it was just a location, a backdrop, not what it really was. He led me through a low hallway and into a room with glass walls on 3 sides and a vaulted ceiling made of dark wood beams. The rain slid down the glass like oil, catching dim reflections from the recessed lights above. There were no chandeliers, no lamps, just soft, wide light. Enough to see, not enough to feel exposed. The room was sparsely furnished. One long gray fiber rug, a pair of stone benches, shelves that didn't try to impress. The books were arranged in no particular order. Some had no titles on the spines, a few had numbers instead. I didn't touch them. As I started to unpack my gear, the security chief entered from the hallway. "Kill the spill," he said. A few techs moved in behind him, fast and quiet. They began draping black fabric over anything that could reflect. Window seams, picture frames, a single low mirror tucked behind one of the shelves. Even my camera's monitor got a strip of tape across the outer edge. They weren't rushing, they weren't panicked, they were just doing what they always did. Then they left. The rain sounded closer now. It tapped gently against the glass, but it didn't echo. Even the storm outside respected the space. A few minutes passed, and then she entered. No shoes, no earrings, no perfume. She wore a soft, pale robe, neutral in color like wet sand, tied at the waist with nothing underneath. Her hair was pulled back in a low pin. No fuss, no crowd, no assistant. Just her and the space. She didn't look at me. Didn't have to. She stepped into the center of the room, where the rug met the stone, and lowered herself to her knees. Slow, precise. Her hands rested on her thighs, palms open. Then she took off the ring. Hadn't seen that one before. It was thicker than the last, dull silver with a shallow grove spiraling around the band. She held it between 2 fingers and let it fall gently onto the stone floor beside her. No clang, no rattle, just a soft click, like setting a coin down on velvet. She leaned forward, picked up the ring again, and rubbed it once, just once, across the stone in front of her. The hiss it made was barely audible, a A low scrape, high-pitched but thin, like tape pulling away from glass. And then it stopped. So did everything else. The rain on the glass, the hum of distant power, even my own breath felt muffled. There was no sound, not silence, in absence. And inside that absence, directly in front of her, just beyond where the ring had touched, I saw something change. It didn't glow, it didn't ripple, it didn't rise from the floor or emerge from the air. It didn't appear, it erased. A patch of space the size of a dinner plate simply stopped reflecting. The fibers in the rug began to lean inward, as if pulled toward a center that wasn't there. Light from the ceiling bent slightly at the edges. Not noticeably, just enough that my autofocus went haywire. My camera lens twitched, hunted, then gave up. I blinked hard, my ears popped, and for a second I felt dizzy, not like falling, like letting go. The pressure behind my eyes lifted, the tight coil in my shoulders unraveled, my whole chest sank, not painfully, just released. She still hadn't moved. Then, in a voice so soft I barely caught it, she spoke. "Not for me," she said. "For the show. Hold them together." She didn't say it to the room. She said it to the absence. To the thing that wasn't there but clearly was. I don't know how long we stayed like that. I didn't dare shift my weight or adjust focus. I didn't even breathe properly. Then the security chief's voice came from behind me. 2 minutes, he said, as calmly as if he were reading a clock. She nodded once, still staring ahead. The absence began to fold in on itself. It didn't vanish, it retracted, like a sigh being pulled back into the chest. The rug's fibers uncurled. The hiss of the rain returned, quiet and confused. My ears clicked again. The autofocus snapped back into place with a jerk. She leaned forward and picked up the ring, flipped it back onto her thumb. Then finally she exhaled. No ecstasy, no collapse, no worship, just breath, just normal again. She stood. "Thank you," she said to the space she had been facing. Then she walked out of the room. No music played, no one clapped. The text didn't re-enter. There was no scene-over feeling. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't even dramatic. It just was. Later, I checked the card. The autofocus logs showed a complete dead zone in a perfect rectangle across the center of the frame. My decibel reader had dropped 3 full points below the known noise floor, something that should have been impossible. I played the footage back with headphones on and heard nothing. No hiss, no ambient, no frequency hum, just a thin strip of digital blackness. That night, I watched a string of comments flood a thread about the estate visit. Someone had seen a drone shot, leaked from who knows where. "She kneels to it," one comment shouted. "Y'all are just scared of women meditating," another fired back. A tabloid ran with a headline the next morning. "Beyoncé private prayer, ritual, caught on camera." A tech blog published a rebuttal before noon. Why infrasound therapy needs controlled environments and covered mirrors. It didn't matter. People had already chosen what they wanted it to mean. All I knew was what I saw, and more importantly, what I felt. As I packed up my case, double-checking lenses, zipping up the pockets on my harness, the security chief passed behind me. He didn't stop walking, just slowed down long enough to say it over his shoulder, like he was giving me advice I wouldn't understand until later. "Don't play room tone at home." And then he was gone. Chapter 6. The Choir with No Mouths. We were 3 shows deep into the North American leg when I was moved off camera and into post. No explanation, no complaints, just a schedule update in my inbox and a new badge that got me into the side building next to the main venue. The production office was temporary, wired into the bones of whatever old office space the arena didn't use anymore. The kind of place with acoustic foam half glued to drywall and rolls of fiber cable stacked like firewood in the corner. There were 5 desks total. Mine was near the coffee machine, directly across from a busted wall clock stuck at 11:40. I didn't notice the time at first, not until later when I saw it hadn't moved across 3 different cities. On my first day in the room, the systems tech, same one from the steamer's swap, handed me a hard drive and said, "Start with the fan vocables." That was a new one for me. He pointed to a folder titled Composite Bed Build, Fan Hume Tracks, and another called AppSync Prompts. I opened one. Inside was a sea of WAV files, each one named after a section number, time code, and 3-letter country code. The file lengths were identical, 10 seconds each. Mono, no variation. "What is this?" I asked. "Stadium app," he said. "They get prompted to hum for 10 seconds during blackout." He sipped his coffee and added, "Lego says it counts as voluntary contribution, keeps the licensing cleaner." I still didn't understand what I was supposed to do. "Just stack them," he said. "Cleanest composite goes under the live mix. She likes a little lift under the hush." So I dragged the first 100 into my timeline and aligned them to the timestamp in the show's cue sheet. What came out didn't sound like a crowd. It sounded like a weather system. There was a texture to it, layers of breath, tiny variations, almost like static, but rounder, more human. And then I saw something in the spectrogram. I zoomed in. Every 9 seconds there was a vertical gap, not a break, a space, like someone had plucked a string and left a clean line in the middle of a blur. These weren't errors. They were symmetrical, timed, repeating. I went back and pulled a reference file, roomtone_11:40 p.m.wav. I ran them side by side. I pushed up. The teeth were identical. I didn't say anything. The systems tech wheeled over in his chair and looked at my screen. "Ah, that's what we call holding the space." He said it casually, like I should have already known. Crowd surges can stack unpredictably. People don't breathe the same when they're excited. It's a liability issue. The spacing keeps it clean, keeps the pulse steady. He leaned back, hands behind his head. Legal cares about stability, not vibes. Still, the silence and the gaps made my skin crawl. Not because it was wrong, but because it didn't feel empty. It felt like a container. Later that afternoon, the benefactor visited. He didn't knock. He didn't clear with the floor lead. He just walked in. Same gray suit, same calm steps, same air of not being out of place no matter where he stood. He looked at my screen and smiled. "Beautiful," he said. He watched the gaps in the spectrogram scroll by, like watching waves from a yacht. "With enough shows," he said, "it self-stabilizes, doesn't even need correction after a while." Then he reached into his pocket and placed something on the edge of my desk. A card. Black, unmarked, smooth to the touch, no embossing, no chip, just matte black on both sides. He nodded, then left. I didn't ask where he was going. I didn't want to know. That week the internet went to war. It started with a blurry backstage photo, someone's cousin, someone's assistant, showing the headliner kneeling on stage during a tech rehearsal, palms open, eyes closed. The post wasn't even accusatory, it just said, "She always does this before the hush, anyone know why?" The replies were immediate. They praying to the void. "She's lighting the subarray. You people don't understand sound design. She's channeling energy. It's ancient African practice. She's manipulating frequencies to open spiritual portals. He's just meditating, damn. Y'all stay trying to call black women demonic. Let her be." Then came the videos. Clips with titles like, The soul humoricial explained, "You'll never unhear this." I hummed for 10 seconds. Then this happened. Is Beyoncé opening a portal at her concert? Side-by-side comparisons of kneeling poses, freeze frames of light bending, looped audio with captions claiming to expose a second voice underneath the composite. Faith leaders weighed in. A pastor from Georgia posted a sermon titled, "The Kneel of the Beast," that went viral in niche circles. A bishop in Lagos released a counter video, calmly explaining that the kneeling posture mirrored a Yoruba blessing gesture linked to the goddess Oshun, goddess of water, femininity, and love. "This is not demonic," he said. "This is lineage." But the replies were split. She's not worshipping Oshun, she's hijacking her. She's not doing anything, it's just art. She's not even kneeling, that photo is edited. She's literally praying to a demon in plain sight. Meanwhile, fans started posting rows of black heart emojis. Not black squares, not symbols, just hearts. Lines and lines of them in the comments under every rehearsal clip, every official video, every mention of the hush. No caption, no explanation, just the mark. I didn't post anything, but I watched, scrolled, read. I told myself I was just collecting data, just trying to understand both sides, just observing. That night, I did something stupid. Open the room tone file at home. Play it through speakers. I used headphones. Noise canceling. Volume low. Safe. I checked the time. 11:38. I pressed play. The first few seconds were nothing. Then the waveform teeth started. 9 seconds between each. At 11 minutes and 40 seconds in, the composite started to shimmer, just slightly. My fridge motor stopped. Not clicked off. Stopped. Like it had been unplugged mid-second. I felt the silence flood the room, not as a wave, but as pressure. The hairs on my arm lifted. I took off my headphones. The glass on the kitchen counter, when I hadn't even touched, let out a high, thin ring. Up to file. The fridge restarted. Louder than before. I didn't try it again. The next morning, I checked my inbox. One new email. No suggest. From my own name. No message, just a link. runtan_1140 pm.wav. The exact file name. The one I never uploaded. Chapter 7. The Array. You don't know where you are until the fog parts. The convoy had no markings, just matte black sprinters and a satellite van with taped-over logos. You lost cell signal an hour ago. The road became gravel, then stone, then straight dirt. Someone handed you a fleece-lined jacket, no branding, and a tiny metal badge that said Level 3, nothing else. Then you step out, and you see it. Massive concrete pedals, some cracked, some mossed, tilted like sleeping eyes. Steel dish silhouettes stretch to the horizon in overlapping arcs. The ground dips in the center like a drained lake. This was a radar array once. Soviet era, then Ukrainian, then nothing. Until tonight. Logistics briefings had warned of legacy RF hazards. You skimmed the memo on the drive. The words didn't stick. Now you understand why. Every dish is wired. Generators line the perimeter, but none are humming. Instead, workers string copper mesh scrams between the radar structures. They say it's to reduce multipath distortion. You don't know what that means, but you know how it feels. Like stepping into a speaker cabinet the size of a village. A radio silence so heavy you can feel your own thoughts bouncing back. Security is light on weapons but thick with protocols. Same mantra. Clear the mirrors. This time it's literal. A tech removes her safety visor after noticing its mirrored trim. A catering guy gets sent back because his thermos has a chrome cap. Even the rear-view mirrors on parked vehicles get gaffer taped over. There are no stars visible. Fog rolls in low, pulled down by the terrain. Spotlights don't punch through. They just glow. The guests arrive in silence. Not celebrities. No influencers. This is a different kind of audience. Weathered billionaires in muted coats, a retired health minister who signs with her hands, a telecom founder you vaguely recognize from an old Fast Company cover. None of them film. None of them post. They take small seats in a circle on the rim of the dish field. They nod to one another. That's it. You're not sure if this is a performance or a test. The rehearsal begins. You're handed a cue sheet. It's not labeled set list, it's labeled waveform progression. You scan it twice before it hits you. It's a palindrome. The same order forward and backward. The center marker is bolded. Hush, 11:40 p.m. Local. You ask a tech if that's symbolic. He says, "Das when the Duga array used to reach scan apex in the ADS." You ask if this is the Duga. He just smiles and walks away. You check the time, 11:32. The performers are minimal, a small crew, no band, just her. She enters the center of the array, like she's walking into a chapel. Barefoot again, same neutral robe, no adornments. This time, the stage isn't wood or vinyl. It's a steel plate. About 6 feet wide, raised a few inches off the ground. No wires running to it, no power signs. She kneels. The moment her knees touch metal, you feel it. Subtle but constant. Your camera stabilizer picks it up first. The micromotors start compensating for a vibration that isn't in the air. Generators aren't running. There's no wind, but the steel plate hums. Then the fog reverses, not literally, but directionally. It stops rolling in and begins pulling toward the center, like gravity's shifted, but only for vapor. She stays still. Your headset crackles. The system's tech's voice, recording now. Composite starts on your mark. You hesitate, you nod. In your earpiece you hear it. The crowd hums. Not the people here. These were sent remotely, uploaded from app users around the world. They're humming into phones from bedrooms and basements, timed to the array's schedule. The audio hits late, then early, imperfectly. 3 takes, 3 different offsets. Your screen shows a shifting latency curve, but then it flattens. The system learns the delay. The harmony stabilizes. She doesn't move. And then something arrives. Not visible, not dramatic. In the shimmer between 2 radar dishes, like heat ripple, except colder. The air in that space feels tight. She bows her head, and the tear comes. Lie down. One clean droplet streams upward from her cheekbone, pulled against gravity. It breaks mid-air, curls like smoke, then disappears. You think you imagined it, but the security chief flinches. He's the one who never flinched. He rubs his ear and whispers, 2 minutes. His voice wavers. The shimmer holds. The dishes don't rotate, but they bend. A subtle groan, like an old house adjusting to a storm. You look at your camera. Nothing is technically moving, but the horizon feels different. Then the benefactor appears, out of fog, walking alone. He joins you by the monitors, watches her kneel, unblinking. "This is the last one," he says softly. "After this, it should hold without her." You look at him. "But what do you mean, hold?" He doesn't answer. You check your timer. 2 minutes. At the mark, the shimmer tightens. Then snaps. A single gust hits the field. The radar dishes creak in unison. Your ears pop. Your headphones go dead. Not broken. All 200 plus crowd mic channels register flatline for exactly 9 seconds. Then they come back, hotter than before, louder, thicker, as if the system was responding. She stands. The tear is gone. She looks skyward and whispers the same 2 words. Thank you. No applause. No music. Just fog reclaiming the field. Chapter 8. Room tone. They said the footage wouldn't be used. I got the email a few days after the array shoot. A polite message. Creative shift. Appreciate your contribution. I've worked enough gigs to know what that means. Usually nothing. Except this one came with a second payment, bigger than the first. No explanation, just sitting there. And a new NDA. 1 paragraph. No publishing of ambient audio, including files with no signal content. That's how they phrased it. Patient, I didn't sign it. Not yet. The first thing I noticed was the closet. Not the sound, not the lights, just the closet. The metal rod was sagging like something heavy had been hanging off it. But I don't keep anything in there. No coats, just some boxes, empty ones. It smelled like wet concrete. I didn't touch anything. I'd been sitting on the file for days. Room, tone _ 1140 p.m. Webask. I didn't record it. At least, not that I remember. But it showed up in my cloud folder 2 days after the last show. The sender email was mine. Same address, same spelling, even the same backup account. That's why I opened it. The file was short, 2 minutes and 14 seconds. The waveform looked flat, a solid, steady bar. But when I zoomed in, I saw the same thing I saw in the sound truck back on day 1. Tiny teeth, every 9 seconds. I hit play. Nothing happened at first. No noise, no hiss, just room tone. Then at 1:09, my fridge stopped. Not a click, not a hum dying down, just stopped. 9 seconds later, it came back on. Same exact pitch, same buzz. But it didn't feel the same. It sounded corrected, like something recalibrated. I played it again. Same thing. I opened up the audio reader. It pulsed every 9 seconds. Just slightly. There were no decibels to show for it. Just motion. Like a breath I couldn't hear but could see. I tried to message the sound chief. Line was disconnected. Systems tech's email bounced. Security guy? I sent him a 1-line text. Did you send me this? 2 hours later, he replied. Don't play room tone at home. Nothing else. I kept thinking about her. Not the show. Not the tech. Just her. The way she looked at the volunteers during the charity shoot. The way she nodded after that kneel in the library. The calm in her voice when she said thank you. She didn't look possessed. She didn't look afraid. She looked tired, like someone who had a job to do and not a lot of room for questions. That night, I stitched the WAV file under my VO for the edit. 1, 2, just a test. I didn't tell anyone. While I was watching the render bar crawl, the lights in my ceiling dimmed for a second. Not all the way out, just low enough to notice. And in the apartment next to mine, I heard it. A neighbor humming 2 notes, held for 2 minutes, exactly in sync with the tone I'd just layered. I muted the timeline. The waveform still pulsed. I don't know what it is. I'm not here to explain it, only to say what I saw. She kneeled, and something answered. That's it, that's all I have. But here's the part I can't shake. Room tone is supposed to be silence. It's supposed to be nothing. But now, it feels like something's listening. And it never left.